2022, we're going to be getting into mushrooms. You're here with Mark Batwell on PerfectGardens.com. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, you can also find us on our Instagram and Facebook, which you can find our links down below. If you haven't checked out our monthly membership, I highly recommend to do so. For only $2.99, you get access to over 1,570 photos, 162 videos, 10 files, 15 audio files, 562 shared links, and 86 members willing and ready to assist you through your growing practice. Make sure to hit the join button on the bottom of every video. I don't know anything about mushrooms, and I want to convert the channel over into edible stuff, food. You've heard me a couple of times, heard the spiel. I think if we take these cannabis growers and start to push them over, I think that is the right thing for them to actually, make money longer term. And mushrooms is one of those things, right? Where if you have all this grow setup and you have all this stuff and you can't sell the flower, well, you could grow mushrooms with all the same setup and all the same gear. And because you need a higher humidity, right? You need certain things to be controlled, and you need the same environmental controllers. You could use the same grow tents. You could use the same, a lot of the same type of equipment, the domes and the humidity. Like, I could be wrong, right? But it's easy to convert them over.
No, 100%. I mean, we'd probably have to consult someone about like spacing it and how to fully utilize the space. But yeah, there's definitely a synergistic effect between the two. I don't know what I was mentioning. We'll talk about it, different like possible setups. What Paul Stammet recommends about putting mycelium into your garden. But of course, it could work. I mean.
All right, I'm going back to your links right now.
Yeah, pull up that PDF because that's the easiest way to explain this. Now, just a disclaimer, I'm self-taught mycologist. I scoured the internet for information and I figured it out by piecing it together. So my technique is bare bones because, again, like what I was able to accomplish, with a syringe, I could accomplish, a few ounces that would suffice my particular needs. Whereas if you add compost or more complex things, you would increase your yield. But what I could provide is just a basic understanding of what's going on, and then a platform where you can, experiment and increase your yield and do bigger grows.
Well, this is perfect because first off, so many people, I think they don't assist other people because they don't think they're intelligent enough or, have enough knowledge to give, or, so it hinders them from passing forward what they have. And kind of us doing this little project right now and getting started with this mushroom group, it's going to possibly allow us to start to, for other people that are interested in mushrooms or might also have a lot more information in the group that just doesn't talk about it. We might be able to start to create another little tiny community within our community, and that's what I'm looking forward to, is like you putting your hand up first and saying, hey, listen, I'm not a PhD guy, but I read a couple things and this is what I've collected. And if anyone else is interested, hit us up on the private Telegram, right? And I think that's the best place to start, really.
I've gotten bins through, so I understand the process. I understand what to look for. So I can get through a bin. So I definitely have a jumping off point.
So what is this? This is the one you told me to open up, right?
Yeah, this is a book. I forget when it was written. It's done by Paul Stammet. Can you actually go to page 16? That's an illustration of the entire process. So this is going to go into the science, what's happening. So in terms of terminology, we're going to talk about this process. These are basically your options, the different ways you can accomplish growing mushrooms. It's slightly incomplete because he did it a while ago. I like to look at it. This left column. This is the left column. So from the inoculation of spawn. Under the pressure cooker.
Right here. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Inoculation is spawn right here.
Yeah. We're going to talk about this process, but the one directly left under the pressure cooker, this is like your at-home tech.
Right here.
Yeah, exactly. And there really should be two other, directions going into the Martha tent, which is, a grow tent, or monotubs. Right. This is what we're going to predominantly focus on. I think because of your situation, this is the easiest, and then you can translate this. Everything else to the right, this is what you're doing outside, outdoors, in your gardens.
Over here.
Yeah. And you see you have a couple different options, but it all spawns from the same exact tech, grain spawn.
And when you say tech, it's the bottle, it's the lid, it's the equipment used to create your mushrooms, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So looking at how to prepare and inoculate, we'll talk about how you actually create the mycelium network, but to create the inoculate, that's known as grain spawn tech. Again, using grains in-house. Oversimplification, but you can think using grains, rye, indoors.
Absolutely.
Outdoors, you're going to use wood chips, ideally hardwood. You could use softwood. And again, it's really about surface area.
Okay, so you're saying that more space is better for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this tech has been kind of tailor suited for home use or outside. And you can use rye outside, but you're going to run into more problems with pests. Obviously, it's a little more attractive as opposed to sawdust or wood chips. And then you're also not going to have as many inoculate points. We could take a step back. If you look at the BRF, brown rice flour, that's like the easiest, most entry-level tech into mushroom growing. But again, you're limiting your surface area.
So just to explain what you're saying right here. So right here, because this is the lowest tech, I'm getting a bottle or a mason jar, a lid. I'm putting it on a tray, and then they're growing. And this becomes my edible tray. But over here this is another form of tech where you could put it in a mushroom bag, you could put it on a wall, you could put it on a hanging device, you could put it outside. You could, and that's what you're saying. Like from here, this is because of my situation where, I'm renting a room in a house with a few roommates. I want to just have some edible mushrooms for myself in my own home, and that's why this works. But like what you're saying, I'm starting to see how this is playing out. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, exactly. So you just have to figure out what you're comfortable with. For example, like, compost, if you're willing to incorporate some horse manure, whether created as this actual bed substrate or a supplement to a synthetic substrate, that as a whole other level of complexity. I kind of did this in my apartment. So you got to figure out what kind of tech you're comfortable with. Again, what I've done is bare bones, where I am sacrificing on yield and canopy display and stuff like that, but I'm also not having to worry about as many factors. So just to explain this chart before we get off of it, basically these are rye grains, right? We have in the middle, I'm going to circle back to this because this requires other tech. So a lot of times you can kind of just start here by cleaning your own rye. We would prepare the rye by pressure cooking it, right? Again, depending on the tech, depending on your situation, you can use one of these jars to create a mycelium network and then inoculate other jars. So this one master jar could eventually inoculate, 10, 20 other jars and then just perpetuate it. So we're looking to create a mycelial network. And then from this tech down below, this is where we're transitioning it into the fruiting body, the mushroom that we know it as.
Got it. So like you're saying, from here we're growing it, and then here we're harvesting it.
Sort of, yeah. The mycelial network is being created in the grains, right? And then we're adding it to some type of substrate that will, again, humidity and light factoring in. Depending on the mushrooms, they're all different. For example, mushrooms that are grown in bags like this, typically like lion's mane, they're CO2 intolerant, meaning this strategy, they'll puncture holes in specific places to promote that growth from that particular area. You can't really grow that in monotops.
Help me understand. What do you mean by monotops? Like you mean with multiple types of mushrooms, you can't grow this specific type because it needs a specific environment? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, some mushrooms are CO2 intolerant. Some, you have to do a little research. and figure like cordyceps. You can Google it. It's called monotubs. Monotub again, that's the at-home typical tech that most people are going to be familiar with.
Got it right here.
Yeah. So you see what we're doing here. We're creating a fruiting chamber situation, where they can grow. And then these holes, this is where the CO2 is coming out and fresh oxygen is going in, fresh air. So again, we're jumping around. We're just looking at different tech, but this is kind of the at-home, the most common, what most people will be familiar with. But you can't grow all species mushrooms in this particular situation.
Just in my mind, I just think about, our cloning trays and how easy we could convert our cloning trays over into a little mushroom farm. That's really interesting. I wonder how much all these mushrooms go for. I just buy the mushrooms at the store and I throw them in the refrigerator, or I just use the ones that they ship me, but I have no idea how much they actually cost on a retail side.
Go back to that other picture if you don't mind.
Yeah. This one?
So you see the walls, you see the condensation, you see the water dripping on the sides. We're creating an environment, a microclimate. So this is the benefits of a monotub, where you don't have to worry about, your humidity, where if you dial in, it's called dialing in your monotub, but if you dial everything properly, we're setting up the holes properly, getting oxygen, clean air in there, getting that CO2 out properly, then everything will be dialed in. This is a relatively self-regulated way of growing. Whereas if you open up like a Martha tent, Google that.
And this, real fast though, this looks just like the corrugated plastic tubs, right? That people would use for like putting their mail in.
You can do this in like a shoebox. Right?
A shoebox. Wow. Okay. Keep going. Then what was the other one?
Martha Tech. Not a little shoebox, but that size, like very small plastic container. So this is a grow tent essentially. But again, this is a little more complicated because now you have humidity pumping into an area, and you have to run humidities very high, in the 90 to 99 range, so obviously contaminants, there's a lot going on here. So this would be a progression above monotubs, and now you have more abilities to grow those lion's manes, some of those different mushrooms. You would do it in a bag. Again, so you would use bag cultures within the monotub, So it really depends on, again, the space you're working with, what you're looking to grow, and then kind of just dial in. And so if you really just want to jump into it, the monotub is kind of just the simplest way to do it. And we haven't talked about like prepping anything. You asked to Rye, but just to get a sense of like, the tech, what you're looking at. And this is everything indoors, and then we can go outdoors, which is just bigger.
What would I call that? Outdoor edible mushrooms?
Well, if you go back to that chart, there's a couple different examples of the different tech.
Oh, okay, down here. So this, like creating
so
a wall.
Google, look up a bag culture, one of those.
Okay.
Or even the log, any of that stuff is super cool looking.
I'll pull them up real fast. Okay, so I got them all up. Okay.
So, obviously, go to that second picture. As you can see, this is in like some indoor tab, but these like weigh about like 150, 200 pounds. So what in this situation, most likely what will happen is these are a sawdust. It's filled up. This was inoculated by some type of grain, maybe agar. But these bags are a heat temperature. They can withstand high heats. And what they do is they puncture these holes in specific places where the mushrooms are CO2 intolerant. So they only grow when they get free oxygen, free air exchange.
So when you say CO2 intolerance, so they do not grow when the CO2 is high?
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't initiate growing.
So when they poke the hole, that initiates the oxygen flowing in, which then starts the mushrooms to grow.
In very specific places. That's why mushrooms like this aren't suitable for monotubs, because you can't control it with that specificity. Because
how do they? Do you know how they determine which spot has the right amount of CO2 or not? Or
I think it's literally you create it by puncturing that hole, by introducing the oxygen into the environment. Because because this is that synergistic energy. The mushrooms are creating CO2, and in the monotubs, there's a specific point when you want to create that CO2 and then taper it off, going back into the process. So CO2, just all things, has this relationship. That's why, back to when I originally posed this question, someone commented that you can daisy chain essentially your Martha tent into your grow tent, where now you're feeding your CO2 from your mushrooms to your plants, again, like kind of indoor.
Absolutely, 100%. Just getting more creative. At the end of the day, I mean, we're us as growers, we're always, for me, I'm thinking commercial growing. And when you do commercial growing, you kind of always have to have the lowest price because you're obviously commercially growing it. But if we're shifting our mindset to providing the food to our homes or providing foods to our family, and then actually and then trying to implement these, what we're growing into our diet, and then looking at on the retail side, that's when we start to save some money. That's when it starts to make a big difference. And so I think, and we're tinkerers too. If people have the equipment and they have the knowledge, it only becomes more of an impressive system when they're able to do all these things.
And the beautiful part about all this tech is everything can be upscaled. You can inoculate your rise grain, inoculate a bulk mass, and then you can do everything bigger. So even one jar, you can inoculate more jars from it. Think of your master plant or clones. So you can upscale everything depending on the space that you're working with, what you're looking to accomplish. And mushroom growing, if you can get your environment dialed in, you can have a very high success rate. The only problem is some of this equipment is very expensive. In terms of the laminar flow hood, just proper creating that sterilized environment. The golden rule to mushroom growing is sterilization. You have to have good sterile procedures. So getting back to this, right, on the top of the chart, just to go down in order, you see here they're creating some type of agar wedge from a petri dish. This is where you would add your spores, again, via liquid culture, spore print, whatever. From there, you can introduce those agar wedges into different jars of, rye grain, and then inoculate and go and multiply.
So okay, so what's happening is you're sterilizing the grain, because that's where it's the mushrooms are taking host on the grain.
There's a lot of different ways to get into it. This is your repetitive, how to reproduce the cycle. This is where you're making your substrate, your medium for future inoculates. So this is how you it circles back. So for example, I was introduced into this really right here in the inoculation of grain, because you can buy liquid syringes and just inoculate grain. So we'll talk about how to prepare that grain, and then inoculate it. Once you go through an entire grow, then you can take a spore print and circle back and do this stuff. But again, you need specific type of tech, and there's DIYs around it.
Well, this doesn't look like it's too much. This is a pressure cooker. A good pressure cooker costs you $250, $300. You got some.
You get the Presto one for $100. It's $130. You
got some trays. Some nice stainless steel trays or something. Those are probably gonna be $30 each. You got some.
But sorry to cut, but you can use tin trays.
Tin trays right there. I'm overcomplicating it right there. It's and these petri dishes and a beaker, that beakers are, so this doesn't look too expensive. It looks like to just get started, I might have $200, $300 in, but I could get going.
So this is a company that has really high, I was supposed to say efficacy. Their stuff is like really high quality, and they could really, you don't necessarily need this stuff. I'm pretty much, we'll talk about ways around, you know, they make the complete kits. Here we see the brown rice tech. If you go back, go to that second picture. So this is like BRF tech. Yeah, this is your entry level tech, because again, if there's any contaminants, you could just take one of them out and drop them, but you're limited with surface area, as opposed to the one to the right, the following picture. This is your grain spawn. This is where you have a lot more surface area. Your yield is going to be a lot higher.
Wow. You know what? In some level, I feel like I want to do bite-sized bits, you know, with these guys. And I feel like we covered so much already that I'd love to just stop right here, actually. Bro, thank you so much. And guys, only on Perfect Gardens TV. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great grow, everyone. So Jason, I thought actually two things. How you plant seeds. Let's go and start with that one. And then let's move into, you know, just your whole process from planting seeds all the way up until you notice the first time you need to transplant and put it into a larger pot. Could we talk about that thought process and your
Sure.